This is a Fox News alert. The Republican field is shrinking just hours after the New Hampshire primary. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and former Hewlett-Packard CEO Carly Fiorina both suspending their campaigns, meaning they're dropping out. Now this after lackluster showings in New Hampshire. And last night's big winner, Donald Trump. And the big surprise, Ohio Governor John Kasich. He came out strong and finished in second place. And now the race heads south. Just before hopping on his plane and jetting off to South Carolina, New Hampshire winner Donald Trump went on the record. Donald, nice to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, Greta.
Well, Donald, last night it was a whopping victory, 20 points in New Hampshire. It's more fun to win, isn't it?
I love winning. It was a great win. It was a great victory. We love it.
Why do you think that on the Democratic side of the aisle that Hillary Clinton got clobbered by Bernie Sanders, 22 points over there?
Yeah, it was surprising to see, and, you know, we're dealing with a socialist, perhaps even a communist. If I listened to his speech last night, that was beyond socialism, so I don't know what's going on over there. That was a pretty big victory for him.
One of your hometown newspapers, the Daily News, Mort Zuckerman owns that, and they had a pretty hostile cover front page to you. What's up with that?
Well, I know him. He's an insecure guy. He's got a losing newspaper. He tried to sell it for the last 2 years. He can't get anybody to give him $1 for it. It's a piece of garbage. And they put me on the cover every time they can. They always put me on the cover to try and sell newspapers. It's going to fold up. I can't imagine anybody buying it. I mean, he's literally been begging people to buy it, but he's just an insecure guy. He's a loser.
Governor Chris Christie, you spoke last night. You had a long conversation. I assume that he congratulated you on your victory. What else did he tell you?
Well, I just spoke to him a little while ago again, and he spoke to me last night. And, you know, he's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. He's a tough cookie.
Also down in South Carolina, that's the next spot you're going. There is a former 2012 Romney campaign staffer, a consultant, who's now got this super PAC, and it's taking a direct aim at you, going up at the air. Your response to that super PAC, they're aiming at you.
Well, a lot of people have been aiming at me. You know, they're all aiming at me, I guess, and that's fine. So far, it's been only driving my numbers up. They should have devoted more time to Mitt Romney and helped him win instead of looking at, you know, taking other people down. But they've all been going after me. I've had, I guess Bush spent $20 or $25 million on me, and he's like nowhere. He's going nowhere. And now Romney's doing a PAC because Romney feels badly because, frankly, that was an election that he should have won. You know it, and I know it. 4 years ago, they should have won that election easily, and they failed. So these ex-Romney people should have focused more on getting Romney elected instead of doing super PACs.
Is your strategy going to change much going into South Carolina? We're back to a population or a voting demographic highly evangelical. Are you changing your strategy between New Hampshire and South Carolina?
Not too much. We've really hit a chord, and, you know, we're talking about border security, we're talking about the military, the vets, and, you know, things that are pretty generic to no matter where you are. I do great with the evangelicals. We have a great relationship, and I'm leading an evangelical vote in polling numbers, as you know, Greta. I'm leading over the nation, throughout the nation. I'm leading, and that's a great honor. And I don't think too much. Really strong military, great trade deals. You know, something I've been talking about right from the beginning. We want really great trade deals, which we don't have now. We lose hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on trade. I mean, just with China alone, we lose that. So, you know, I think the message is going to stay pretty much the same.
All right. The news today, and some of the business news today, is that Sears is going to accelerate the closing of 50 stores. And, you know, we always talk this sort of big picture about politics, but closing 50 stores are really going to hurt a lot of families. If you're president today, is there anything you would say or do? Because these families, they're going to take a big hit.
Well, the retailers have a lot of problems, whether it's Sears or Macy's or any of them, because it's sort of like becoming an older line business. But I don't know, Sears, it looks like more of a financial play than anything else. You know, something's going to happen. They'll either rent those stores or re-rent the stores, or they'll be knocked down and a building will be put there. It'll all work out. Eventually, it'll all work out. It doesn't look very good right now. I saw that. And Sears has a major headache as a company. You know that.
I went to Facebook and put your picture up and asked for some questions. And Michael Patrick Martin, one of my Facebook people who likes me on Facebook, says, what does it say about the polarization of the country that a socialist is winning the Democratic primary? And how can you, that would be Donald Trump, compete in a general election with an opponent that claims virtually everything will be free?
Well, because the taxes are not going to be free. Your taxes are going to be 95%. If you look at what this guy wants to do, I mean, frankly, they should be about 120% if you really want to know the truth. Everything he wants to give away, you're talking about like 95% tax.
But how do you run against that? So
eventually that'll be explained. I'll explain it.
How do you run against that?
You run against it by explaining that.
And you think that, and
well,
that's the easy?
Just what I explained.
Okay. All right. Another question.
I mean, who's going to pay? Who's going to pay 95% tax? You literally would have to pay 95% tax to pay what this guy wants to do. I mean, he wants to take everything away from one group. But the truth is, once you get the taxes beyond a certain point, he's unelectable.
All right. Catherine Hagan, also on my Facebook page, says she's heard a lot about politicians talking about helping the vets and other people. But she says, what about our seniors? And I see a lot of questions like, what, if you're president, what are you going to do about Social Security? And what about seniors?
Well, it's a great question because I spend a lot of time with the vets and helping the vets, and people don't talk about the seniors. I'm talking about the seniors, and I have been for a long while. The seniors are in a lot of trouble, and now they're talking about, many people are talking about cutting Social Security. I am not going to cut Social Security. I'm bringing the jobs back. I'm lowering taxes. We're going to have a dynamic economy again, Greta, and we're not cutting Social Security.
We're just, today, Carly Fiorina suspended her campaign. I don't know if you know that yet, but you have any thoughts about Carly suspending hers?
Well, I thought she was very nice. I thought she was very effective in a lot of different ways. I didn't know she suspended, but, you have to do what you have to do, and we'll see what happens with Chris, likewise.
One other question from Facebook, and I know you get this one a lot, but this is from Pat Myvold, and says, why don't you act more presidential? I like you, but I don't like the bad words that you insert into your speech. Are we going to hear of a little cleaner language or softer language, or is this Donald Trump?
Well, sometimes I'll copy other people's language. Like the other day, we had 5,000 people in New Hampshire. It was amazing. In a blizzard, we had 5,000 people, more than that. And a woman got up and used a little bit of a bad word. And I said, don't you dare use that word. And everyone said, what's the word? I said, here's the word, but she used it, not me. We were just having fun. I reused her word. And I will tell you, the place stood up and they were giving a stand. It was like a standing ovation. It's called politically correct. We're too politically correct. Now, with that being said, as I get closer and closer to the goal, it's going to get different. We started off, Greta, you were there right from the beginning, 17 people. Now we're down to not very many people, probably 6 in the end of the day, maybe even less than that. And once you get to a certain level, it changes. I will be changing very rapidly. I'm very capable of changing to anything I want to change to.
All right, another New York billionaire may get into the race. Mayor Bloomberg, at least we hear some sort of chatter. What are your thoughts of another New York billionaire getting into the race, if that happens?
Well, I know Michael very well. He's a friend of mine. I hope he gets into the race. I think it would be good. I'd love to compete against him, and I think we'd do very well. I would love to see Michael in the race.
In looking at this whole, you've now become a politician because you're in politics. What's the biggest thing that has surprised you from the inside, or from being a politician, that you never anticipated when you were just a billionaire businessman?
I'll tell you what really a little bit surprised me, but it's a pleasant surprise, how smart the American public is, how much the American public cares, and how they want to change the country and bring it back. And I have never seen anything like it. It's Love Fest. I mean, like tonight, I'm leaving. As soon as we're finished here, I'm going to South Carolina. We have thousands and thousands of people showing up for an event, like a rally or whatever you want to call it, that I set up like 2 days ago. It's unbelievable. So the love they have for this country, Greta, is unbelievable. And that's a very pleasant surprise. I assumed it, but not to the extent that I've seen. It's incredible.
Donald, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you'll come back soon.
I will. Thank you.
And a note to all of you viewers, here at On the Record, we reach out regularly to all the presidential candidates on both sides of the aisle. This, of course, includes Secretary Hillary Clinton and Senator Bernie Sanders. And we have aggressively tried to book both Democratic candidates, and both campaigns are well aware of our invitation. And each of the campaign knows their candidate would get a fair interview from me. And it is bye-bye Goodbye, New Hampshire, and hello, South Carolina. Less than 24 hours after the polls closed in New Hampshire, the 2016 candidates already in South Carolina getting ready for next week's South Carolina primary. The state reporter's Andrew Shane has been on the ground for weeks and is live in Columbia, South Carolina. Andrew, what are the voters looking for in South Carolina?
Well, I mean, at the moment, they seem to be looking for Donald Trump. I mean, based on the polls that we've had since August, Donald Trump has led them pretty consistently. He only lost one to Ben Carson during his surge in the fall. But for the most part, that's what's been happening. Ted Cruz is the second choice at the moment. He's pretty much going to be using the same kind of tactics that he used in Iowa to get social conservatives and evangelicals on his side. And then we have Marco Rubio. We haven't had a poll in about 3 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how what happened in New Hampshire is going to play out for him in South Carolina.
When you turn on the local news or the TV and you drive down the street, is there one candidate who you see flooded with? I mean, who's saturating the airwaves and the yards?
It's a little bit of everybody. I mean, it's more along the lines of the PACs and how they're maybe even launching some attack ads at this point. You know, you see a lot of ads aimed at Marco Rubio lately, for instance. We've seen ads that have been targeted at Trump and at Cruz. There are a lot of ads, for Jeb Bush from his PAC especially. You know, Jeb Bush is making South Carolina really a major stand for him. His brother and his father, won the primary here. His family's got a legacy here, and if he's going to really make an inroad in this campaign, it's going to be here in South Carolina. He's got to make it here in South Carolina.
Do you expect former President Bush 43 to be campaigning for his brother? Any word about that?
Our understanding is yes. We're going to go see 43 here, see George W. Bush come and campaign for his brother. When, where, we're still maybe waiting to hear on that. But there's already a radio ad being aired down here featuring George W. Bush advocating for his brother. So next we get the real thing.
Andrew, thank you. A little trivia. Newt Gingrich won 4 years ago, 40%. Number 2 was Mitt Romney at 27, 13 points behind. Anyway, Andrew, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
And Ohio Governor John Kasich surging in New Hampshire to finish in second place. Governor Kasich's strong finish breathing some life back into his campaign as the candidates head south to South Carolina.
We are going to start winning again, and we're going to win so much. You are going to be so happy.
Tonight, the light overcame the darkness of negative campaign.
Our disappointment tonight is not on you. It's on me.
We are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before. I love you all. Thank you, New Hampshire.
I'm going to South Carolina. I can take my coat off.
You may have watched me last night. I was disappointed in the way it went. Our people on the ground there worked really hard. I mean, they were walking in the snow. They were knocking on doors. Somebody got bit by a dog. It was tough.
The great thing about Iowa and New Hampshire is it's narrowed the field and it's given South Carolina a clear choice.
We're going to do as well as we can here, and then we're moving on. And, I'm really looking forward to the South. I'm really looking forward to the Midwest.
But here's the good news. We got a game coming up. There is a future here for us and for this campaign, but more importantly for this country.
Now South Carolina is going to play the role that it has always played in presidential race, the historic role of choosing presidents.
This is the chance before us. We cannot let it pass us by. South Carolina will be definitive and determinative, and I need your vote. Come out and help us. I need your support.
We need a leader that believes in the American people, that believes that we're on the verge of greatness again, that believes if we get government off our backs and make government work the way it used to, that we'll rise up.
So, New Hampshire, I want to thank you. We love you. We're going to be back a lot. We're not going to forget you. You started it. Remember, you started.
And the other record political panel is here from the Hill, A.B. Stoddard and ABC News political director Rick Klein. Rick, if you look at the numbers, we're down to 7 Republican candidates, if you count Governor Gilmore. Big change today.
It is. The field is winnowed, but at the same time, there was another contender entering the mix with John Kasich in his strong second-place finish that puts him into the first tier. So I actually think that this blowout blows open more possibilities for Republicans. It hasn't provided any real clarity. South Carolina may. If it doesn't, then we're looking at a very long campaign. I think the likelihood is greater than ever that we're looking at a long slog to the nomination.
And a note to the viewers, that's obviously Donald Trump speaking live in South Carolina. We're monitoring that as well as a Governor Jeb Bush event. We're monitoring that in the control room. If something happens, we'll bring that to you. Big winner besides Donald Trump last night?
I think Ted Cruz has not been given credit for coming in third place in New Hampshire, spending very little money, but using his energy and whatever resources he put into it effectively. And it's not Ted Cruz country. I thought he did to beat Bush and Rubio was a big victory for him, and I think he's well positioned for South Carolina. So I thought that he was another victor. And obviously, Kasich, look, he put everything in, and he did not come in close to Donald Trump, but he came in ahead of everybody else, and that does give him a ticket to South Carolina. He's probably not going to do so great there, but he has a long game. He's going to look to Michigan, Ohio, other places where he's going to do well. He might get some money out of this. He has a good crowd gathered tonight waiting to see him, and I think Rick's right. We don't know.
Will the money pour in for Kasich based on that second place win in New Hampshire?
He'll get enough to play himself into the next round. But here's the thing. The establishment lane is still so crowded. If you were money on the sidelines or between candidates, you don't have any more clarity now. You still have Rubio. Jeb Bush is able to get to the next round as well, and you have Kasich. So I don't think it's going to be determinative. I've talked to his people. They say they've got the mechanisms to collect it. They're hoping to get the surge, but I don't think it's going to be anything like the money bomb we just saw for Bernie Sanders on the left.
Okay, viewers, now is your chance to vote at home on Twitter. It's my favorite part of the show. Do you think candidates aggressively attacking other candidates helps their own campaigns? Tweet yes or no using hashtag Greta. We'll show you your live Twitter votes throughout the show. Amy, I think the big winner is Senator Rubio, because now Governor Christie's out, because he was dogging him, and he hit him hard at that debate.
Right, that's true. And the interesting thing, of course, is that the benefit did not redound to Christie. It ended his campaign.
That's right. He didn't get the benefit of it.
But it certainly helped Kasich and Bush. I think the problem for Rubio going in and having done a fifth place showing in New Hampshire to South Carolina is, as Rick said, now there's a more crowded establishment bucket, and it's going to be really tough for him. He's whatever doubts people had in hoping that he was the one about him possibly being unready and untested, were really exposed. And I think people, you saw them late break away from him in New Hampshire for Kasich and Bush. And so they're going to, if they don't like Trump and Cruz, they're going to look at Bush, but they're going to look at Kasich too.
And I think that Christie getting out helps Donald Trump, because he's sort of a blunt, straight talker, as some people think that Trump is. So that helps Trump if Christie's out.
The big thing that helps Trump is the continued confusion in the rest of the field. As long as there's four other guys fighting it out, Donald Trump is able to secure the votes. That's why he blew out the field yesterday in New Hampshire.
And look at the votes. So far, 77% say no, it doesn't help, but it sure seems to have an effect in the voter box.
Good news for Kasich.
I think people know they're not supposed to say to that
exactly.
one.
Do I get to vote?
No, you don't get to vote. Anyway, both of you stick around. This is a Fox News alert. 2 Maryland deputy sheriffs shot and killed, murdered in a shootout with a suspect. Witnesses say one of the deputies was talking to the suspect in a Panera restaurant in Abington when the suspect shot the deputy in the head and took off. The second deputy was shot and killed while chasing the man and shooting the suspect dead. The 68-year-old suspect had outstanding warrants in 2 different states, including assaulting an officer in Florida. The identities of the 2 deputies have not yet been released. And Senator Bernie Sanders clobbering Secretary Clinton at the polls in New Hampshire. But can Senator Sanders keep up the momentum? That's next. Also, as the Republican presidential field shrinks, are the candidates who are still in scrambling to change strategies to woo endorsements? We'll take you back live to South Carolina coming up.
I don't know what we'd have done tonight if we'd actually won. This is a pretty exciting event.
We won because we harnessed the energy and the excitement that the Democratic Party will need to succeed.
I know I have some work to do, particularly with young people.
What voters here in New Hampshire confirmed tonight is nothing short of the beginning of a political revolution.
Senator Bernie Sanders coming off a huge win in the New Hampshire primary. The big Sanders win coming after some prominent women pulled the gender card for Secretary Hillary Clinton. Former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright said, quote, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other." And feminist activist Gloria Steinem saying women are supporting Sanders because that's where all the young men are. So we sent our Griff Jenkins out in New Hampshire to see what some women think about that.
Bernie's the best. We need him very badly for our nation.
America is going to have a revolution.
Thank you so much.
She's the best candidate out there. She's the best person for the job.
You guys voting for Sanders just because you want the attention of boys.
Absolutely not. Gloria Steinem, I think, proved that her brand of second-wave feminism is really out of touch with what millennial feminists are attracted to in this campaign.
When you're young, you're thinking, you know, where are the boys? The boys are with Bernie.
No one's had a more consistent record than Bernie when it comes to women's rights, and he's always stood for the people that need more rights and support.
Bernie! Bernie! Just remember, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other.
Hillary! Hillary!
Nobody's going to hell. It was a joke.
And I'm just glad that she is a woman, but she's also the most qualified candidate out there.
I feel like she's a really good, strong candidate.
We're voting for who we feel is right for our country, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the sex of who they are.
So is Secretary Clinton in trouble? 2008 Democratic presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich goes on the record. Good evening, sir. And is it fair to blame the candidate for some dopey things your supporters say?
I mean, Bernie Sanders, chick magnet. Who knew?
Right. But I mean, but Gloria Steinem saying that that's where the guys are, white young voters.
When you're in a campaign, you get people coming from the sidelines into the center of the ring. They'll say things, and we have to hold the candidates to what they say. And I think that Hillary Clinton's challenge is going to be to address the economic issues that Bernie Sanders has brought to the forefront. And if she fails to do that, she fails at her own peril.
Well, right now she's leading. She had a bad night in New Hampshire, and I was virtually a tie in Iowa. But she's leading in delegates, 394 to 44, because of superdelegates. So she's clobbering them right now in delegates.
Well, but the delegates are not a function necessarily of the caucus and election process. That's what people have to watch. I think it's going to be a tough thing in the Democratic Party if a candidate gets the nomination based on the superdelegates, because that doesn't really reflect the will of the people within the Democratic Party. So I think that she still has a chance to get a majority of the delegates on her own. But she's going to have to go back to the concerns that American people have about wages, about jobs, about the inequitable distribution of wealth in the society, issues that Bernie Sanders has brought forward and, frankly, has gained a lot of traction on.
She's going to South Carolina. He's going to South Carolina, big African-American vote there. And read an article by a woman named Lauren French in Politico today saying that Thursday the Congressional Black Caucus will be endorsing Secretary Clinton, and that 6 members will be down South Carolina campaign for her. I think South Carolina, she doesn't have to win it, but it sure would help her to win it. Is that a big endorsement?
It's quite significant. I mean, the Black Caucus has political impact, but even more so, that together with the ministers in South Carolina can help turn the vote out heavily in Hillary Clinton's favor. Because you have to remember, it's not just a top-down word from Washington. It's hearing from people inside the church and the communities.
Look, Senator Bernie Sanders says that he wants free college. She says that it's affordable college. Free college, I mean, like, we'd all like free things. I'd like free things, too, but if it's impractical. At some point, isn't he going to say who's going to pay for this? And he can't, even if he took all the billionaires' money, he's not going to be able to pay for this college.
Well, part of the plans that he brings forward, he has to make a case as to exactly how he's going to pay for it. You can't do that in a couple of sound bites during a campaign. So he has to lay that out. Certainly, reallocation of the money in this country could occur, which would bring about the ability to help more kids go to college. There's no question about that. Let me give you an example, Greta. You know, we blew $5 to $6 trillion on the war in Iraq. I mean, just think of that money that had been put in domestic policy.
Oh, can we start on waste and fraud? We spent $44 million on a gas station, natural gas station in Afghanistan. But you know what? No one's running on that. Bernie Sanders isn't running on that. Nobody's running on that.
Greta, one of the first committee meetings I was at in Congress, it turns out the Department of Defense, this was 18 years ago, had $1 trillion in accounts they couldn't reconcile.
Right, I'm going to take the last word on this, but before he starts taxing everybody, maybe you ought to clean up the government. Because maybe we don't even need the money. Maybe
who says we need more taxes? You just have to reallocate the money.
All right, anyway, nice to see you.
Okay, good to see you.
Nice to see you. And are evangelical voters the path to victory in South Carolina? And will the fight to pick up those votes spark round 2 in a blistering new Trump-Cruz feud? More on that straight ahead.
With Humira, remission is possible.
Well, New Hampshire already in the rearview mirror. The 2016 candidates fleeing to South Carolina for the next primary test. But South Carolina is not Iowa. It's also not New Hampshire. So what are voters in the Palmetto State looking for as the race heads south? Time Magazine's Zeke Miller is in Charleston, South Carolina. Zeke, first, how was the flight down on the Governor Kasich plane?
You know, he was very joyful. Let's just say he was pretty confident with his strong second place finish there in the state. Thought it gave him some momentum. Came back and talked to us for a bit on the record and talked about, and sort of said he was pretty confident coming in here and hoping to do well down in South Carolina.
All right, so what is the strategy down South Carolina? I realize you've only been there about 12 hours, but you guys don't sleep when you're on the campaign trail. So what are you discovering?
You know, right now, there are two different races going on. You have the Donald Trump-Ted Cruz race, probably for first, and then you have all the sort of the three main establishment, sort of centric Republicans, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, and Jeb Bush, who are fighting their own separate race. For Trump and Cruz, this is going to get very nasty. Already it is, with the Cruz super PAC on air and the Cruz campaign preparing to release ads against Donald Trump to actually try to beat him again here and maybe put an end to the Trump phenomenon. In the establishment line, it's a fight to become the third candidate in the race, the alternative to both Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. And right now, it's a jumble. You have, Marco Rubio, after his debate performance, has fallen in the state, certainly, as well as just like we saw in New Hampshire. He needs a strong performance here. John Kasich is looking to repeat his performance in New Hampshire. He can't win here, but he can spoil the other two in consolidating them. And Jeb Bush really needs to win. He needs to beat the other two in that lane now in this state, and he hasn't. He has to rely on his ground game in order to do that.
Zeke, just a note to the viewers: we have Governor Jeb Bush tomorrow. Of course, he's got to do a big showing in that state as well. Zeke, thank you. One thing South Carolina has in common with Iowa: lots of evangelicals. So will those evangelical voters pick the winner in South Carolina? The On the Record political panel is back. AB, the evangelicals, they picked Cruz essentially in Iowa, but they certainly have been in full force behind Donald Trump despite the salty language.
Right. And Cruz is going to try to make sure that changes. 65% of the primary electorate, Republican primary electorate there in 2012 identified as evangelical. And Cruz, as I said before, is well positioned there. They're really going to they're going to try to discredit each other. So Cruz already knows that evangelicals are looking for sort of religious purity in Donald Trump. They're looking for other things. And so he's going to have a challenge trying to fend off Trump's poll numbers. But look, polling in South Carolina is old right now. We don't have fresh data. We're all waiting to hear, to find out what's going on. This is a state where the establishment used to sort of reign supreme. Not anymore. This is a state where Republicans in their primary pick nominees. Not anymore, because everyone since 1980, but Newt Gingrich won 4 years ago. And so
by
with
a
Donald
big
Trump
margin
in the race, we can say, anything could happen. I mean, Jeb Bush is hoping there's a large military vote. He's hoping that the Bushes, have really good feelings there and people are going to be good to him. He can hope he has a good ground game. But with Donald Trump in the race, we don't know that South Carolina is going to do what it's always done at all.
And, Rick, we've got Senator Lindsey Graham endorsing Governor Jeb Bush, and Congressman Trey Gowdy and Senator Tim Scott have gone Rubio.
That's right. And there's a lot of factors in South Carolina that are different. One is it's an open primary, which means you can choose which side you want to play in. That's similar to New Hampshire. Like Iowa, it's more evangelical, although it's not as conservative evangelical necessarily. There's a split even among evangelicals. There's some moderates. There's some much more conservative elements. And then the Democratic primary is entirely different because it's so overwhelmingly African American, more than half, and that we didn't see in New Hampshire or Iowa. But Amy's right. We don't know what to expect there. There are a couple of different kind of mini races going on right now, and I think Trump benefits from fighting among the other guys. And if he can continue to see those guys do their thing, he comes in with a head of steam out of New Hampshire.
How does Rubio find in South Carolina that the New Hampshire debate doesn't carry with him?
I think he did something really savvy and something rare in politics. Last night in his speech, he said, I made a mistake. I screwed up. It was a bad debate. After a couple of days of saying otherwise, that, I think, changes the story. It was important for donors because they were starting to get very, very worried about him if he said that was actually a good performance. But more importantly, it gives him something else to talk about now. He's not talking about the bad debate. He's talking about what he's going to do better next time.
Anyway, A.B., Rick, thank you both very much.
Thanks,
and
Greta.
a ruling by the United States Supreme Court that's going to shake the White House. That's straight ahead. Plus, some good news tonight for those terrified passengers aboard this nightmare cruise ship. That's next.
Trust the boys to get you there.
Get ready to speed read the news. More than 2 months after 14 people were slaughtered in the San Bernardino terror massacre, the FBI still cannot get into one of the shooter's phones. FBI Director James Comey saying agents cannot unlock encrypted data. The cell phones of Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik are now the main focus of the FBI's continuing terrorism investigation. And now it's Alabama. The rapidly spreading dangerous Zika virus is there. State officials confirming Alabama's first case in Morgan County. Zika has been found in 13 states and Washington, D.C. And today, CDC Director Tom Frieden saying Puerto Rico, which already has more than 20 cases, will see those numbers continue to climb. And thousands of people aboard the Nightmare cruise will finally be home tonight. On Monday, we showed you the video of the Royal Caribbean ship being thrown around in a violent storm. The ship, the Anthem of the Seas, will dock at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight in New Jersey. And that's tonight's speed read. And the Supreme Court dealing a blow to President Obama's EPA executive action. That decision could have a major impact on another one of President Obama's executive actions headed to the Supreme Court. Immigration. Fox's correspondent Shannon Bream is here. Shannon, so what happened?
You know what? This was a 5-4 vote, and it appears that it caught the White House off guard. It has to do with the EPA's new carbon emissions rules. Opponents of it said it's going to kill the coal industry in the U.S., and so a number of states had gotten together with utilities. They'd gone directly to the Supreme Court to say, please block this rule while the underlying case is playing out. The White House didn't expect it, but the court did it by a 5-4 vote, blocking it without explanation. But it's raising a lot of questions about this next big case they have dealing with executive action, the executive branch, which is immigration. You'll remember the president took a lot of unilateral action with regard to immigration. The White House says it's all within his power. It's completely legal. The court will decide that soon. We'll have a decision by June. They're going to hear the case probably in April. But a lot of people are asking questions now. Listen, if the court's willing to step in here and block this EPA rule they saw possibly as an overreach, what does it mean potentially for other decisions that are coming, including that big immigration case?
So what, White House shaken?
Yeah, they said that it was unprecedented. They're saying that they feel confident ultimately they'll prevail on the merits, but clearly they're upset about this because by delaying implementation, this could bleed over into the next presidency, and of course it's going to make a huge difference as to who gets elected, as to what happens with these EPA rules.
And the immigration order case that's been argued?
It's going to be argued in April, we believe.
Okay. And then, and of course, the court will decide it by the end of June.
Right in the middle of the presidential election.
And this one didn't go straight to the Supreme Court. This actually went through the regular procedures.
The immigration did. I mean, it's winded its way through the courts, and so it will be heard on the merits.
Shannon, thank you. We'll be watching. Thank you. And horrifying news tonight, Vladimir Putin may be helping ISIS. Catherine Herridge is here next. You are looking live.
And this is absolutely chilling.
The president versus the On the record, taking you to the scene.
Go inside the story and on the record.
I love taking you behind the scenes.
When the news breaks, Greta's on the case.
Investigating on the ground.
With big interviews, smart questions.
Get something now you're probably not going to get from the media often.
And the facts you won't find anywhere else. No one gets the story like Greta. Don't miss The Smart Choice. On the record, weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Terrifying news about the war against ISIS. Our Russian Vladimir Putin helping ISIS in Syria. The Obama administration's point man for defeating ISIS gave this warning today.
We were working with local opposition forces to move east to fight ISIL. And that was a very sophisticated endeavor, but as the Russian airstrike campaign has begun, particularly north of Aleppo, those fighters are now peeled off that line to go fight the regime advance. And this is causing us real problems for the counter-ISIL campaign. And frankly, we tell the Russians this very clearly. You say you're fighting ISIL, but what you're doing is actually having a detrimental effect to the fight against ISIL.
Fox's chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge is here. Causing real problems is the way he describes this.
I mean, that's really an understatement. What we learned in that testimony today is that with the Russian airstrikes, this sort of siege of Aleppo now by the Syrian forces and then support by Iran, they're effectively creating a humanitarian crisis in this city.
Deliberately?
Clearly. Deliberately.
Okay, I'm saying, is there any sort of defense to this at all?
I don't know how you can defend taking 30,000 people and cutting off food and water to them and calling that anything but coordinated.
What's the Obama administration doing this? Where's this great coalition we have that's supposed to be fighting this?
Well, one of the other things that's now clear with the testimony is that the U.S. is not willing to bring in the assets it has to instigate a no-fly zone to offer some protection for Aleppo, because that is what would be required, but it's not a step the U.S. is willing to take right now.
But I thought we had a coalition. I mean, maybe if we're not willing to do it for whatever reason, where's this grand coalition that's supposed to be doing this stuff?
Well, someone's got to lead the coalition, and we're not willing to take that step right now. But
why?
I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that what is happening in Aleppo is coordinated. It's between the Syrian forces, the Russian airstrikes, and then also Iranian support. So you have this sort of access that's cutting off 30,000 people, and at this point, the U.S. is not going to intervene. The other thing we learned today is that the administration feels that as much as they would like to see Assad leave, that this would create yet another power vacuum in Syria and create a new opening for ISIS.
Well, that's
it's very sad.
Very sad.
Yeah,
it's Assad,
sure.
It's Russia, and it's Iran all palling up against these people in Aleppo. It's just incredible.
Anyway, very sad.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton continued to be dogged by questions over her private email server. Is her growing email scandal to blame for her trouble with voters?
Everything I did was permitted. My use of personal email was allowed. I fully complied with every rule that I was governed by. There was nothing that did not give me the full authority to decide how I was going to communicate. I never sent classified material on my email. There was no law. There was no regulation.
So how do U.S. national security agencies and departments handle classified information? Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador John Bolton, is here to go on the record. Sir, just to get started, the question of having a server in the basement, forbidden, right?
Right.
No questions asked about that. Just wrong.
Right.
Forget whether it's classified or unclassified. You're not supposed to have government email.
Right. Well, what she did was do government business on a private email server. That's obviously wrong. That's just a matter of common sense. And even worse, over this personal server, she sent and received classified information and clearly knew it. That's why so many elementary security precautions have been violated here that it's just hard for people who have been in the government and actually had this kind of classified information to understand how she got away with it for so long.
All right, the information we're getting obviously is from anonymous sources, and you know we haven't yet seen exactly what it is. Presumably, though, that if it's wrong and these emails are there, this will go to a grand jury, right?
I think it's almost unavoidable. I mean, take any of the defenses that she's raised that you just saw in those clips, that the information was not marked classified in the emails. Number one, that's irrelevant. And number two, it's an unarguable admission of guilt if you put classified information in an unclassified email and then stamp it classified when you send it. That's saying you know you're doing something wrong. Of course they didn't do that.
You know, there are a series of, I think, 22 emails that will not get released because they have a classification, top secret? They will
Beyond that, it's
right.
because...
Which is sort of, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but if those are impermissible to have, but they won't be released, I don't see how those would ever go to a grand jury, because you've got to let the grand jurors see them, and you've got to be able to let the accused confront them. So those 22 are forever gone, right? I mean,
well, I'm not sure. I think with adequate protection in the grand jury, it might be possible at least to discuss the substance of them. You could give them to the court for in-camera review.
But then what about an open trial?
And you'd have to limit discussion of them to the subject matter in court. But I think that's also part of the pressure that the prosecutors could put on, and I think it's evidence that could be used in a subsequent phase to show harm to the United States if Russia or China or others compromise that server.
I see the Obama administration in a position where it has to have it presented to a grand jury, because otherwise it looks political if it doesn't, because there's so much uncertainty, because everything's anonymous. And at least, if it's presented to a grand jury, 16 to 23 citizens, not the Obama administration, not the Republicans, but they will make a determination looking at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, I think a lot of people are very cynical about Obama, and I'm certainly not going to defend him, that the possibility of political abuse here is present. But let's not forget, Obama could see a stain on his legacy, too, if he's seen as tanking a legitimate prosecution for political purposes. And I believe within the FBI and within the Justice Department, the people believe very deeply that if you can't prosecute high-level officials, then you don't have a rule of law anymore, because the lesser-ranking officials say, but why are you prosecuting me when you didn't prosecute the Secretary of State?
But it's so awkward, and the timing of this is also, awkward because of the race going on. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Anyway, Ambassador, thank you, sir.
Glad to be here.
And coming up, do you know the political know-it-alls? And do they really know anything? I'll explain off the record. That's next. Let's all go off the record for a minute. Big night last night in New Hampshire. If you listen to the pundits, who sure have lots of opinions, you would think the primary season is over and that the nominees have now been chosen. Well, not so fast. That's just chatter. We've done this rodeo before lots of times. Remember who won the New Hampshire primary for the Democrats in 2008? Then Senator Hillary. That worked out for her. Apparently not too well. She didn't get the 2008 nomination from her party. Then Senator Barack Obama did. So now, forget the know-it-all pundits. They're just having fun like you talking about it. No one knows who's going to win the two parties' nominations. And yes, last night, Donald Trump and Senator Bernie Sanders both won big. No, huge. But it's only 2 down. Lots of voting to do. And remember, when it's your state's turn, don't just tweet about the candidates. Go out and vote. And that's my off-the-record comment tonight. And it's time for your campaign flash. New Hampshire winner Donald Trump just ended his speech in front of a large crowd at a rally at Clemson University. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush still speaking at his third event of the day at Carolina with Lindsey Graham. And Ohio Governor John Kasich holding a town hall and touring a steel factory after his strong second-place finish in the New Hampshire primary. And that's tonight's campaign flash. Live Twitter voting results on your screen right now. Do you think candidates aggressively attacking other candidates helps their own campaigns? And here are the results. 80% say no, 20% say yes. That's all for now. We'll see you again tomorrow night right here at 7 p.m. Remember to go to my Facebook page and like it. Lots going on there. Good night from Washington.